Have you ever wondered what happens when the sun sets on the forgotten? Have you ever felt like something was watching you when you're completely alone? Ever passed an old, boarded-up asylum and felt the hair on your neck stand up? Now imagine stepping inside, not during a sunny afternoon, but at night, alone. I never used to believe in ghosts, much less the twisted whispers of the insane long gone. That changed the year I took a contract security job watching over abandoned medical facilities. Money was tight, and night shifts paid extra. But I never expected what I found. What found me. These are the true stories of what happened during 3 long months working alone inside America's most notorious forgotten asylums. I swear every word is true. Brookside Asylum had been abandoned since 1973 after a fire gutted its east wing. But the basement, where they kept the most violent and unstable, was left mostly untouched. I had one job: make rounds every hour with a flashlight and radio in. Simple enough. The first night was quiet but cold, colder than it should have been for summer. My flashlight flickered the moment I reached the basement stairs. Batteries were new. I kept going. The air grew heavier as I descended. Musty. Like mildew and something else. Something like copper. The hallway stretched into darkness. Doors lined the walls, each with a narrow window. I peeked into one. The cell was empty, but the bed was made. Every single room looked lived in. My radio crackled. Static. Then a whisper. "Help me." I froze. The signal was local. "Base?" I asked. "Did you say something?" Silence. Then again. "Help me. Room 12. The doors had numbers etched above them. I was at 6. I should have left, but I walked forward. Room 12 had no bed. Just claw marks, deep gouges running across the walls and floor. No sign of life, until I turned around. The hallway had changed. No longer empty. Shadows stood behind the glass of every door, watching, silent, unmoving. My flashlight died. The radio hissed louder, then laughter. I ran. When I reached the top of the stairs, the basement door slammed shut behind me. I never went down there again. But every night after, I heard footsteps below, and whispers, calling my name. Fair Hill State Hospital was notorious in the 1950s for its extreme patient treatments, electroshock therapy, ice baths, even isolation chambers. By the time I was stationed there, the main facility had been gutted, but the east wing still stood, sealed off from the elements but thick with time and memory. On my second week, I pulled the overnight watch at Fair Hill. The local kids used to dare each other to sneak inside, so my job was mostly keeping out thrill seekers. But that night was different. Around 2:33 a.m. I heard it. Screaming. Not just any scream. This was layered, like a dozen throats wailing in unison. And it was coming from inside the building. I grabbed my flashlight, heart pounding, and stepped into the wing. The hallway was pitch black. My light barely pierced the murk. As I moved deeper, the screaming stopped. Silence. Then, a sharp metallic clang behind me. I turned, saw nothing, and continued. Room 3C had its door cracked open. It wasn't earlier. I nudged it with the tip of my flashlight. A gurney sat in the center, straps loose and dangling. On the far wall, etched into the plaster in what looked like fingernails, "We never left." Suddenly, a blinding white light filled the room, like an overhead surgical lamp flickering to life. Then the straps on the gurney snapped upward, lashing the frame like something invisible was being restrained. I backed up. Fast. Then came the footsteps. Rapid, heavy, rushing toward me from the hallway. I turned and bolted. As I sprinted back through the corridor, every door slammed open in sequence. Bang, 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 as if something was chasing me. The moment I crossed the threshold, the screaming started again. But this time, I realized something terrifying. It was coming from inside my radio. That was the last shift I worked at Fair Hill. No one ever believed me. But sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I hear that scream. Not from the past. From down the hall. I didn't think much of Hollow Creek when I first arrived. It looked like every other decaying asylum I'd seen. Brick walls blackened by time, vines strangling the windows, the smell of rot clinging to the air like a fog that wouldn't lift. But something felt off from the start. For one, the nurse's station light was always on. Always. Even though the building had no power. I figured it was an illusion. Moonlight or the reflection from my flashlight. Until I walked past the station and saw her. A nurse? Standing perfectly still behind the shattered glass window, her back turned. Dressed in an old-fashioned uniform, white cap, long sleeves, red crosspin on her chest. I blinked. She was gone. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks. I'd been doing overnights too long. I needed sleep. But deep down, something knew she was real, or had been once. That night I patrolled the second floor. As I reached room 214, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, a perfectly made bed, pristine, with a folded hospital gown at the foot. Then the temperature dropped. Freezing. My breath misted in front of me. A low hum filled the room. Mechanical, like an old fluorescent light trying to start. Then the lights did flicker, briefly, and for half a second I saw the nurse again, standing over the bed, her face pale and unnatural, lips stitched shut, eyes black. She turned. I didn't wait. I bolted down the hall. Behind me I heard the click, click, click of her heels following. She never ran. She didn't have to. The next night I checked the patient files in the records room, dusty and yellow with age. One caught my eye. Eleanor W., head nurse. Died on duty, 1966. Found inside room 214. Cause of death unknown. That was the same room. Same floor. Same woman. I wanted to quit. But I needed the money. One more shift, I told myself. Just one. It was my last. The last night at Hollow Creek was the worst. I told myself it would be just another shift. But from the moment I stepped inside, the air felt thick. Like the building itself was holding its breath. Waiting. The nurse's station was empty. The eerie glow of that unexplainable light vanished. But something else had taken its place. Whispers. Soft, barely audible, but surrounding me like a cold wind circling through the halls. I stopped and listened. It wasn't one voice. Dozens murmured all at once, overlapping. I tried to move, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Then the shadow came. Not just a shape, but a presence. Dark and shifting like smoke, yet solid enough to freeze my blood. It stretched across the hallway, swallowing the dim light from my flashlight. And then it whispered my name. You shouldn't be here. I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, my heart hammering like a drum inside my chest. Suddenly the shadows flickered. And in the space between light and dark I saw her. The nurse with the stitched lips, her hollow eyes staring into my soul. She reached out, not with hands, but with cold that seeped into my skin, chilling me to the core. I stumbled back, crashing into the peeling wall. I tried to run, but every corridor twisted like a nightmare maze. Doors slammed shut behind me. The whispers turned to screams. Stay with us. Forever. I screamed too, pushing through the darkness, desperate to escape. When dawn finally broke, I found myself outside the gates. Breath ragged, clothes torn, heart pounding. I never went back, but the shadows followed me home. At night, when the silence falls, I hear her voice in the dark. You left your watch. You belong to us now. And I know, the nightmare never ends.